now we can take advantage of the notion of comparing tuples and use sorting. And so what we're going to produce is a list of tuples, and then we're going to sort them, right? And so we can get a list of tuples from a dictionary, and then we can sort that list of tuples, and then we can end up sorting dictionary items by taking this two-step process. Convert dictionary to a list, sort the list, and then we can have assorted dictionary values, okay? And so we'll do this a couple of different times. So if we take a look at this code right here, we have our happy little dictionary, A, B, C, A maps to 10, B maps to 1, C maps to 20. Like, what are we going to get here? Well, it comes out, the mapping is the right way, but the order is whatever. And now we say this function called sorted, which takes inside a sequence and then returns us a sorted version of that, a list that's sorted. And so it says sort D items. So it's basically going to take this list and compare the A's and the C's and the B's, and because it's a dictionary and all the keys are unique, there's never going to be equality, so it really is going to just sort this by keys and never get to looking at the values. You could construct a list that had duplicate, you could make a list of tuples that had duplicates in the first, like we did before, but given that this coming from a dictionary, the first thing is going to always be unique and distinct. And so if we say sorted D of items, that we're passing this stuff into sorted. Sorted is going to go around, move stuff around, and then give us back a sorted version, sorted in ascending order based on key, without looking at the value. And so that's a way to see dictionaries sorted by key, is just say sorted of D sub items. And sorted is a function, and so it just fixed stuff. And so this is the kind of loop that you're going to write to do that. You know, we did this before. We took sorted and we got these sorted by keys. And so you can just make this nice and simple for key value. By the way, you can eliminate the parentheses here. And I think it's prettier if you eliminate the parentheses, but you could put parentheses. This is still a tuple without the parentheses for key and value in sorted. So that says go through D items, but before I go through them, please sort them. So that means K is going to go through A, B, and C deterministically every single time it's going to go. And of course, value is going to go through the corresponding values. So now we can print this out nicely, sorted by key. And that's a real nice, succinct little way to say that. I mean, again, these are one of the kind of things that people really like about Python, is that you can do pretty powerful things with easy to understand. I mean, you might have seen this for the first time, but ultimately you look at that eventually and you'll be like, oh yeah, I see exactly what that's doing. Easy, not hard at all. So, but let's say we're looking for the most common word, which we have been for weeks and weeks and weeks now. And so we want to sort by values, not key. So this is an example of where we're going to construct a data structure. We're going to imagine a data structure, and then we're going to write code to construct the data structure, and then that's going to make our problem easy. So this is an example of using cleverly constructed data structures to do this. And the data structure that we're going to create is a list of tuples where the value is first and the key is second. So you can just, with items, get key value. I want value key. So let's take a look at this code. Take your time and get it right. So KV goes in C items. Well, that is unsorted and going to go through whatever A, B, and C in whatever order. And we're going to make a new list. So this is a data structure that we're creating temporarily. And what we're going to do is, this is a list. And we are going to append to that list a tuple. So this is going to be a list of tuples. Except we're not going to append them in key value order. We're going to flip them and append the first part of the tuple is going to be the value and the second part is going to be the key. So we end up with this. This is sort of our temporary data structure that we have constructed to make our job really easy. So this ends up being 10A, 22C, 1B. Now we just kind of flipped them. We took this order and then we flipped them around. And so now we have this nice little list sitting in memory in a variable. And that's really simple. We can say, oh, look, we can use sorted. And we can sort by now the values because they're the first thing. I mean, the sorted doesn't know that they're how we produce this list. It just looks at that and says, oh, that's a list of tuples. I'm going to always sort by looking at the first item in any tuple. And I'm going to add reverse equals true, so I get a descending sort. So I see that the value that is highest ends up being first. And so that changes this, and I'm just sort it and then reassign it back into temp. And I'll print this out, and so now you see it's sorted in descending order of key. So it's value, key, value, key, value, key, but it's sorted in descending order, okay? And so that's an example sort of just like, if I just made a data structure and I flipped those things around, I could use sorted to sort these things. There's many other ways you could do it, but there's sort of like the more elegant way of doing it. And the clever bit here is like, make a new list and make it be a little bit different. Okay? So here we're going to print out the top 10 most common words in a file. And most of this code is review, so if we take a look at it, we're going to open a file. We're going to start a dictionary for our counting. We're going to, there's going to be words and lines, right? And so we're going to have a for loop. This for loop is going to go through each line. And then, of course, we're going to split them, which is busting them into pieces. And then we have a for loop within that, and this for loop is going to go through each word. And so that means that by nesting these loops, we're going through each line, and then within the line we're going through a word. Then we go to the next line and go through the words. And eventually this line of code, count subword equals counts.get word 0 plus 1, our idiom for making a histogram, right? This line right here is an idiom. If you don't know already what that is, go back to the previous dictionary lecture and understand it, because you're just going to use it over and over again. So now at this point, and I always like drawing horizontal lines in code when we write it, at this point, coming through at this point, counts is right. Counts is the histogram. It's not sorted. So now we want to sort it. So we're going to make a new list. We're going to loop through key value, and then we're going to make a tuple. I'm making this be 2 lines to make it a little easier. Value key, so I'm flipping it, right? So I'm flipping the order of these things. That's making a tuple, and then I'm appending that tuple to the list. Okay? So at the end of this, we have a list of tuples in value key order, VK, VK, right? So at this point, coming through here, I've got in my LST variable, I've got this really useful bit of code or useful bit of data that I produced. And then I'm like, oh, now it's ready to be sorted. Poof, sort. So take list, sort it back, and sort it in descending order, and then stick that back in list. Now we want to print it out, but we don't want to print it out. So we got a nice sorted list coming down here. We don't want to print it out in value key, because that's what it is. It's in parentheses V comma K order, but it's sorted. And we know that the highest value is here on down. And so we're going to say, we're going to run through, and now we're going to go through this new list, only the first 10, start at the beginning up to but not including number 10, which is the first 10. For value key in, and so value is good. So this is the iteration variable that's going to go through each of these things on and down, and then we're just going to print it out flipping it. So we re-flip it, flip, flip. We print it out key value, and it's going to work. Okay, so that is one way of doing this, and this slide right here you absolutely do not need to figure out. But some of you will look at this slide and you're like, why didn't you show us that in the beginning? And others of you will be like, no, keep telling me this stuff here. So I don't know exactly the term for this, but this is a very procedural. This is a classic algorithms and data structures approach to solving this problem. This next thing uses what are called lambdas, and they kind of create what's called what I call a closed form, where you kind of do it in all one statement, and there's all this implicit stuff going on. So if you don't get this right away, don't worry too much about that. But roughly, this single line does everything that bottom half of that program does. I mean, if we go back to here, it's pretty much this line does everything, does that in one line. Okay, it doesn't create the counts and it doesn't print out the top 10, but it does everything in that middle bit. So let's take a look at this. So we all are going to collapse this down. So we have a print, that parentheses the end of the print. And then we have sorted, and remember that sorted takes as input a list. And so that's not too bad, and returns us a list. And so we'll print the return from sorted. And then this is the funny part. The fun part, funny part. This is called list comprehension. And we have square brackets, and we say to Python, this is a list. But instead of listing the things or having a constant of 1, 2, 3 or append, append, append. We are going to create an expression that will act as a generator for all the elements. And so this basically says this is a list of 2 tuples, v and k, and then this is sort of implied. For all kv in c.items. And so this is like a for loop that is sort of driving this. Think of this as like stamp, 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 stamp. However many times it has to make a stamp. And so that's producing a list, right? It just manufactures this list. And then that list is sort of manufactured in the moment. There's no stop, it's not put in a variable. Python makes that list according to the stamping pattern that you've told it to stamp out this list, and then it passes that stamped out list without even storing it in a variable into sorted. Sorted moves the list around because it is just a list of tuples, and then gives us back the sorted list. And so I didn't put reverse equals true on here, but you see that this is sorted in ascending order now by key. And I did that all in one little statement. So look at this. This is also one of the beautiful things about Python, that you can build these things, and you can build more complex versions of this, and there's a lot of real elegant things that you can do in Python that are really succinct. You should be careful, because in the beginning I think this is easier to understand, even though after a while you're like, wait a sec, why am I putting all these extra lines in? Because this is not so hard to understand, but at some point, you will want to master this more powerful and more succinct version of Python that expresses it in terms of what the data you want to see rather than the steps you want to take. So this sort of finishes up tuples. We've done a bunch of stuff. I mean, really, they're simple and elegant. Tuples, lists, and dictionaries are all related. They're really 3 different, three foundational data structures, 3 foundational collections of Python. And we combine those in a lot of different ways.